I'm 19 years old, just starting college, and I've always been the quiet niece. The one who kept her head down, never caused drama, and stayed out of family politics. But this summer, I got pulled into something I never could have imagined, something I still don't understand fully, and honestly, I don't even know if I want to. When my uncle died this spring, it wasn't entirely a shock. He was 61, lived alone in a massive old Victorian house that had been in our family for generations, and he was never exactly what you'd call healthy. He didn't have a wife or kids, and most of the family hadn't talked to him in years. He was the kind of man who always felt one step removed from the rest of the world. But he and we actually got along. I'd visit him sometimes on weekends during high school, mostly because I felt bad that no one else did. He'd talk to me about books and music, and sometimes I'd just sit there while he tinkered with old record players or sorted through weird antique collections. I didn't think much of it. He was quiet, and so was I. It worked. When he passed, his house sat empty for a while. No one really wanted to deal with it. Then one day, my mom asked me I'd be willing to stay there for the summer, just to keep it from being vacant while they figured out what to do with the property. It would be a favor to the family. Plus, it was only 45 minutes from mine. She figured I could use the space and quiet to focus on my classes. I said yes. I didn't think much. The house was huge and a little creepy, sure, but I remembered it from child visits. Same old dusty rugs, same creaky stairs. I brought a few boxes, my laptop, some clothes, and moved in like a big deal. It was peaceful at first, until I started hearing noises. They weren't loud or sudden, more like soft thuds, like someone dropping a book upstairs, even though no one was there. I tried to brush it off as the house settling, but one night, around 3 a.m., I swear I heard breathing outside my bedroom door. That was the first time I locked it, and the last night I slept all the way through. The morning after I heard the breathing, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe my ears were playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had been right outside my door. I didn't even open it until after sunrise. I made myself busy that day, cleaned, rearranged furniture, ran errands, anything to distract myself. But even with the music on and windows open, I kept getting this weird sensation, like the house was watching me. Every mirror felt like an eye. Every creak underfoot made me flinch. That night, I pushed a chair under the doorknob before I went to sleep. It didn't help. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up cold. Not like the AC kicked on. This was wrong. Like the air had been sucked out of the room. I sat up, heart hammering, and the first thing I noticed was the door. Still locked, chair still wedged tight, but something was off. There was a shadow stretching across my floor. A long, thin shadow, but nothing in my room could have cast it. I watched it, barely breathing, for what felt like forever, and then it just moved, like it crawled back under the door. I didn't sleep again that. The next day, I started searching the house. I needed answers. I don't even know what I thought I'd find. Maybe a weird draft, a broken vent, anything to explain what I'd seen. I went room by room, opening closets, tapping walls like some ridiculous ghost hunter, and for hours nothing, until I got to the library. It was one of the oldest rooms in the house, wood-paneled walls, built-in shelves, and that musty smell of paper and time. I used to love it as a kid, but now, standing there alone, it felt different, like the air was heavier. I ran my fingers along the book spines, thinking maybe there was a hidden panel or loose board. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed something strange. One of the lower shelves looked newer, different wood, slightly darker, and there was a book that didn't match the rest. No title on the spine, no dust on the cover. I pulled it out, and immediately there was a click. The shelf in front of me shifted, and then it moved. The wall opened. Behind it, a narrow, dark passage. At first, I thought it might just be a storage space, or some kind of old wine cellar. But when I stepped inside, the smell hit me. It wasn't dust. It was rot. And in the dim light, I could just barely make out what looked like another door at the end of the passage. Heavy, iron, with deep scratch marks all around the frame, as if something had tried to get out. I stood frozen in that hidden hallway, staring at the iron door. Every instinct in my body told me to turn around and close the wall back up. Lock it. Forget I ever saw it. But curiosity has a way of swallowing common sense, especially when fear starts to blend with fascination. The scratch marks were old, but not ancient. I could see raw wood beneath the chipped paint, like whatever had made them had claws or sharp tools. The door itself didn't have a knob, just a latch, heavy, rusted. I didn't open it that day. Instead, I backed out of the passage, heart thudding so hard I thought I might throw up. I replaced the strange book on the shelf, and the wall clicked shut like nothing had happened. It was seamless, perfect. Like it had never moved. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Who would believe me? I was staying in the house alone. My mom would have driven out immediately and dragged me home by the arm. And honestly, I still wanted to believe I was imagining things, but I couldn't stop thinking about that room. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the bedroom. I dragged a mattress downstairs and set up camp I kept the lights on, every single. I wrapped myself in a blanket and stared at the hallway leading to the library, waiting for something to happen. It didn't. But the next morning, I noticed something new. There were muddy footprints, right at the base of the library door. Bare feet, small, leading out of the room, just a few steps, and then disappearing, like someone had walked out, paused, and vanished. I touched them with my fingers. Still damp. I lost it. I tore through the house, flipping on every light, opening every closet, checking every lock. I even called out loud, like some idiot in a horror movie. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. Eventually, I grabbed my phone and did something I probably should have done weeks earlier. I called my uncle's lawyer. He didn't answer, but I left a message. I told him I had some questions about the house, about what exactly my uncle had been doing here. I asked if there were blueprints, anything to explain, secret rooms. Maybe he'd laugh it off. Maybe he'd call back with some boring architectural detail that would make me feel stupid for freaking out. But instead, a few hours later, he texted me back. All it said was, "Do not open that door." I never told him there was a door. That text sat on my screen like it was pulsing. "Do not open that door." No hello, no explanation, just that sentence. I stared at it for a full 10 minutes, rereading it, hoping I was imagining things. I wasn't, and the worst part? He still hadn't returned my call. No follow-up, no context, just a warning and silence. So naturally I texted back. I asked him what door he meant, how he knew, what was behind it. I kept typing and deleting the word scared, because I didn't want to admit that, but my hands were shaking too much to lie. He didn't answer. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. That was the first moment I realized something bigger was happening, something way beyond just creaky floorboards and creepy shadows. This wasn't about a haunted house. This was something else. That night, I didn't sleep, not even on the couch. I sat up in the library, back against the bookshelf, facing the hidden wall, waiting. I didn't know what for. And then, just after 2 a.m., the wall opened. I didn't touch anything. I didn't move, but I watched as the shelf clicked forward slowly, groaning like it hadn't moved in years, even though I'd opened it the day before. It swung out on its own, revealing the passage again. Darker than I remembered, colder. The air smelled different, too. Not just old, sweet, sickly sweet, like rotting fruit, or maybe something worse. I should have run. I should have slammed the wall shut, blocked it with furniture, called someone, anyone. But I was stuck there, frozen, my heart thudding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. And then I saw it, a shape, at the edge of the darkness. Not moving, just there. Small, still. It looked like a child, maybe 6 or 7 years. Pale, hair hanging down over their face, barefoot. I blinked, and it was gone. No sound, no movement, nothing. But the door at the end of the hallway? It was open, wide open. I bolted, ran out of the library, didn't stop until I was out on the front porch, barefoot, still in my sleep clothes, standing under the porch light like it would somehow protect me. I stayed there until the sun came up, shivering. The moment it was bright enough, I went back inside, shaking with every step. The shelf had closed again, like nothing had happened, but I didn't need to see the door to know it hadn't shut. I could feel it. The house was different now, awake. I didn't go back into the library. Not that day. Maybe not ever, if I could help it. I kept all the lights on, every door open, every window unlocked, because for some reason the thought of being sealed in made my skin crawl. Around noon, the lawyer finally called me back. His voice was off, shaky, like he'd been drinking or hadn't slept. Maybe both. He didn't bother with small talk, didn't ask if I was okay. Just launched straight into it. He said my uncle had left him specific instructions in the event I ever discovered the hallway. Not if, when, which meant this wasn't an accident. This wasn't some secret he'd hoped would stay buried. He knew I'd find it eventually. According to the lawyer, my uncle had been obsessed with that part of the house for years, said it wasn't on the original blueprints, that no contractor or repairman had ever been able to explain its layout. The passage didn't line up with the rest of the structure. The interior dimensions were off, like space didn't work the same way inside it. I asked him what was behind the iron door. He hesitated, then said the worst thing he possibly could have. Your uncle thought it was a person at first? That stopped me cold. I asked him to explain. Slowly. I wanted every detail. Apparently, years ago, before I was even born, my uncle started hearing voices in the house. Soft, childlike. He assumed it was just the house creaking, maybe some psychological leftover from a lonely childhood. But over time, the voices became clearer, and they knew things. They called him by name. They told him secrets about the family, things he couldn't possibly have known. And when he tried to ignore, they got louder, more demanding. They wanted out, but he didn't know what was behind the door, until one night, he opened it. I asked him what happened when he did. The lawyer didn't answer right away. Then, barely above a whisper, he said it wasn't human. I went cold. The thing behind the door, whatever it was, had tricked him, pretended to be a child, played innocent. But once it was free, even for a moment, something changed in the house. My uncle never spoke about that night again, except once. He told the lawyer he'd locked it back in, that he'd found a way. But he warned everyone, that no one must ever open that door again, not even a crack. Because the next time it gets out, it won't go back in. The call ended after that. I sat in the hallway for hours, staring at the closed door of the library, trying not to think about what I'd seen. The footprints, the shadow, the child-sized figure in the hallway. And then I realized something that made me go numb. When I first visited the library as a kid, there had been one shelf that was always empty. Now it wasn't. That night, I barely moved. I stayed planted on the couch, lights blazing, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles hurt. I kept reading the lawyer's last text over and over. Do not open that door. Like it would protect me. Like words alone could hold whatever was behind that wall. But deep down, I knew something had changed. It wasn't just a creepy hallway anymore. This thing, it knew I'd seen it. It knew I was alone, and it wanted to talk. Around 1:15 a.m., I heard the floorboards creak upstairs. Just once, like a single step, but I wasn't upstairs. Then nothing. 5 minutes later, the lights flickered. Not a power surge, more like something wasn't letting the electricity work the way it should. They dimmed down slowly, then came back to life, one bulb at a time, like something was walking through the house, flipping switches in reverse. I didn't breathe, and then I heard it, a voice, right outside the living room. Not loud, not whispering, just soft, childlike. It said my name, once, just once. It wasn't a question, it wasn't a cry, it was a statement. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, stomach turning. I walked to the hallway, my bare feet quiet on the wood. The voice didn't come again, but I could feel it now. Like the air had changed shape, like something was pushing against the edges of the house. When I turned the corner and looked toward the library door, I stopped, because it was open, just slightly, only a sliver, but it had been closed all day. I was sure of it. I stepped closer, slowly. I don't even know why. I wasn't being brave. I think I was just too scared to do anything else. And then I heard it again, this time from inside the library. I know your secrets. That stopped me. It wasn't a child's voice anymore. It was layered, like someone was speaking over themselves. Echoes on top of echoes. A dozen mouths trying to form the same sentence all at once. I backed away, and as I did, the door to the library creaked wider. The lights above me flickered once more, and something I couldn't see, stepped into the hallway. I didn't wait. I turned and ran, out the front door, into the yard, barefoot in the dirt, gasping for air like I'd been underwater for hours. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because whatever it wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted me to see it. I spent the night in my car, parked at the edge of the woods behind the property. I didn't even bring my shoes. Just grabbed my keys and bolted. My skin felt too tight, like my own body was trying to reject me, and I kept shaking even though the air was warm. I watched the house from a distance, all night. No movement, no lights, just the silhouette of that old Victorian against the trees, still and silent, like nothing happened inside. It was a perfect lie. I didn't go back inside until morning, and even then, I stayed near the door. I didn't go near the library. I didn't even look in that. I took a shower, packed my bag, made myself coffee with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, and sat at the kitchen table like it was just another Tuesday. But all I could think about was that voice. I know your secrets. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. And that's when I started thinking about something I hadn't thought about in years. When I was 13, something happened to me. Something I never told any of my friends. Not even it wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic. But it haunted me. It was something I did. Something selfish. Something cold. Something only I knew. Until now. That's what shook me the most. Not the voice. Not the shadows. Not even the hidden room. It was the realization that whatever's in that hallway doesn't just pretend to know you. It does know you. Sometime around noon, I finally worked up the nerve to check the library again. The door was closed. I pressed my hand to the shelf that opened the passage. It was cold. Colder than it should have been in a house with no air conditioning. The book that triggered the wall was still there. But this time, when I reached for it, it was wet, like it had just come out of water. I left it alone. I called the lawyer again, left another message, told him about the voice, about the door opening on its own. I asked, half begging, if he knew what the thing wanted, why it was still here, why now. An hour later, I got a text. Just one line. It always chooses the quiet ones. I didn't know what that meant. Still don't. But as I was staring at the message, the doorbell rang. I jumped so hard I dropped my phone. I peeked through the window, expecting maybe a neighbor or a delivery driver. It wasn't. It was a girl. no older than 6, barefoot, hair covering her face, and she was smiling. I didn't open the door at first. I just stared at her through the glass. This little girl with dirty feet and tangled hair, standing perfectly still on the front step, like a doll someone left. Her head was tilted just slightly. She was listening to something, was still smiling, not a kid-like grin, knowing. That was the part unsettled, the confident, like she already knew how this would end. I stepped back from the door, heart thudding, and started dialing. My thumb hovered over the call button, but then she did something that stopped me. Just one slow, and that's when I'd seen her in a photograph. My uncle kept a wall of old black and white family photos in the upstairs hallway. Most of them were labeled grandparents, cousins, distant relatives I'd never met, but one had always stuck with me. It was a photo of a little girl standing in front of the same house, maybe a century, barefoot, same posture, same tilted head, same smile. I ran upstairs. I don't know why. I think part of me needed to know I wasn't losing it, that the memory was real, that I wasn't just seeing things because I was sleep-deprived and terrified. The photo was still there, third frame from the left, on the back, written in faint pencil, Eloise, died 1902, found behind the wall. My blood ran cold. I took the photo downstairs, but when I looked through the window, the girl was gone. I checked the driveway, even though no footprint, no sound, just silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't try. I sat in the hallway outside the library, holding the photo like it would protect me, and waited. I didn't know what for. The door creaking open again? But around 3:12 a.m., I heard something else. Laughter. Childlike, muffled, distant. But it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the walls, like something was crawling between them, pacing, watching. And just as I stood up, fully ready to run again, I saw it. Something slipping under the crack of the library door. Not a shadow, not a mist. Fingers. Small, pale, writhing, like they were searching for something. I backed away. The lights above me flickered again, and behind the door, I heard her voice, sweet and soft, whisper, "You already let me out." I didn't scream. I don't know why. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe the fear had carved out something too deep inside me to even let sound come out. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the tips of those fingers curled under the door like worms reaching for, and then they disappeared, back into the dark. The library door didn't open this time. It didn't have to. I knew what she said was true. I already let her out. I'd done it the moment I pulled that book from the shelf. That single click, that quiet shift in the air. I'd unsealed whatever prison my uncle had built, and she wasn't the only thing in there. The next morning I went back into the library. I didn't want to, but I had to know if the wall had shifted again, if the passage was still open, if the door was waiting. It was. This time the book wasn't wet. It was gone, just an empty space where it had been. The shelf still clicked, though. The wall still moved, and behind it, the hallway was darker than ever, like the light didn't just avoid it. It couldn't enter. I took a flashlight. Stupid, I know, but something had changed in me. I wasn't curious anymore. I was angry at the silence, at the tricks, at the way this house had wrapped itself around me like a trap waiting to snap. The passage was colder now. My breath fogged in front of me like I'd walked into winter. The walls pulsed with damp. Mold climbed like veins across the wood. And the door? Still open, wide. The room beyond it wasn't empty anymore. There were drawings all over the walls. Childlike scribbles in red and black, and something that looked like ash, stick figures with no eyes, scratch marks circling the ceiling, and in the center of the room, a small wooden rocking, old, splintered, but moving, back and forth, back and forth. I didn't step in. I couldn't, because something was crouched in the far corner, just outside the reach of the flashlight, small, shaking, watching. It whispered something. At first I thought it was my name, but then I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me!" Not the girl's voice, a boy's, younger, weaker. I stepped forward, just one step, and the beam caught a flash of his face, and I froze, because I knew him. I didn't recognize the clothes, or the cuts, or the tear track, but the eyes, they were mine. I stumbled back, heart pounding like a hammer in my ribs, and he just kept whispering, over and over, "Help me, please, she won't let me leave." And then the door slammed shut, right in my face. The flashlight flickered, died. The hallway behind me sealed with a mechanical click. I was trapped, in the dark, in the cold. But then, the girl started singing, from inside the room, and I remembered something my uncle once said, when I was 9 years old, curled up in that same library, asking why the house felt lonely. He smiled and said, "Some places aren't lonely. They're just waiting for someone to notice." The air in that passage turned solid. It pressed against my skin like wet cloth, thick and choking. I clawed at the walls, trying to find the latch, the crack in the shelf, anything, but it was gone, sealed behind me. And inside that tiny room, the girl kept singing, soft, off-key, a lullaby I somehow knew, even though I'd never heard it before, like it had been stitched into my bones. The boy, my reflection, my echo, whatever he was, had stopped whispering. I couldn't see him anymore. I couldn't see anything. Just the dark and that awful, sweet voice wrapping around me like a blanket soaked in fear. Then the rocking horse stopped. The room fell silent. And she spoke. "You shouldn't have come here alone." The voice wasn't in the room. It was in me. I saw flashes. Memories that weren't mine. A man hammering boards over the iron door. My uncle, younger, panicked, hands shaking as he poured salt along the threshold. Then another man, much older, dragging something out of the room, sobbing. All of them trying to contain her, but they never really did. They bargained. They offered her pieces of themselves. Secrets. Pain. Some even offered their children, just enough to keep her sleeping, until someone like me came along, quiet, curious, alone. The perfect invitation. The room around me groaned, wood cracking under pressure that wasn't there seconds before. I felt something behind me, breath on my neck, fingers at my back, and then, just when I thought I would be pulled into that black pit forever, the wall opened. The shelf swung out behind me like it had been yanked by something furious. Light poured, not warm, not safe, but enough. I didn't think. I ran. Through the hallway. Into the library. Out the door. My legs barely working. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the road, barefoot and sobbing and empty. I never went back. Not even to grab my things. A week later, my mom called to say the house had been sold. Apparently, the lawyer made a private deal with a buyer who specializes in restoring historic. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. But last night, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. No stamp. Just my name on the front. Inside was a photo, the library, and sitting in the rocking chair at the center of was the girl, smiling, and next to her, holding her hand, was the boy with my eyes. But here's the part that makes me cold down to my spine, the reflection of the glass on the cabinet door. I'm standing in the room too, smiling.